Hey guys, welcome back to the Pro MMA betting podcast. We're going to go over UFC Milwaukee, which is the last UFC before Christmas, and we get a 2-week break. Nice rest for everyone after the frantic spell we've had over UFC every week for the past couple of months. Just to touch on last week, members took a small loss, approximately, depending on what odds you got, around a 2-unit loss, which was disappointing. But we had a clean sweep on Cage Warriors. We had a clean sweep on the UFC. It's actually a draw in the betting that let us down. Now, some of you guys that are members would have got a push or a void on the boxing draw. I've graded it as a loss my end because the book I use grade draws in boxing as a loss, not a push. So it was a loss, although some of you would have had that leg voided and therefore would have won with the other 2 legs, as we had the boxing bet in a treble. So unfortunate there, but 2-unit loss is going to happen. We can't win every week. We are unbeaten betting MMA for the past 7 MMA shows that we have bet on. So we're on a really solid run on the MMA side of things. For me as a bettor, I've probably learnt not to bet on boxing now unless it is an elite level boxer. Not saying it was a bad decision, but there's so much corruption in boxing. Can't tend to trust these big favourites. I mean, the boxer we bet on wasn't a massive favourite. We got him at around -275. It looked like he was cruising after the first 5 rounds, but then he gassed. He was a little bit green. He's only had 16 fights. He was fighting a savvy veteran. Probably should have taken that into account. So we live and learn, and we evolve as bettors. That's my job, to evolve as a bettor. So from now on, I'm probably going to stick to just elite boxers when I bet on their money line, at least inside the distance and so forth. I'm still going to consider it a lower level, but for money line on boxing, it's probably just going to be on the elite level from now on. But as I said, we cleared up on the UFC. I actually managed to turn a profit on the night. I bet max just before the fight started. That came in. I also had a really good time on live betting, so I managed to turn it around and actually net a profit. But on pre-bets, unfortunately slightly down, but as I say, we live and learn and we evolve. I did say to members as well that I was really tempted to bet max, but I was just worried regarding the concussion issues, so I actually held off, but actually bit the bullet just before the fight started. So it wasn't a tipped bet. It was too late for me to send it out to members and put it on my record as a tipped bet. But you can see on my Twitter at Pro MMA Betting, I've posted the bet slip where I did bet max before the fight started, and also posted the winnings I had on live betting. So we did turn a profit, but as I say, clean sweep on Cage Warriors. I've actually won on 14 Cage Warriors events in a row, so I'm unbeaten across the whole of this year, and to some extent last year. I've not gone back to have a look to see when I last lost on Cage Warriors. I probably weren't even tracking my bets then, so but I'm 14-0 unbeaten this year. UFC, another win on the UFC. As I said, 7 MMA shows in a row we've won on, so we're on a good run. We've got 2 UFC shows left, and there's a big boxing show on the 22nd here in London. So the aim is to have a clean sweep and finish really strong for the remainder of this year. So let's move on and have a look at UFC Milwaukee happening on Saturday night. First fight of the night is Chris De La Rocha versus Juan Adams. As you may have started to tell from the previous podcasts I've done, these are more of a tailored to the betting taste buds. So I do talk about odds, I do talk about kind of what I call the betting commandments. There are certain bets I won't make depending on weight division, if a fighter's chinny, if they gas, etc. So this one is a straight up pass for me. I've not even done tape on it. It's a low level heavyweight fight. There's no chance I'm risking money on a fight such as this. I've been betting many years now, and I learned a while ago now to avoid betting on heavyweights unless they're at the elite level. One punch can just change things, especially at this low level. It's just not worth me risking my money, especially when you look at the betting line. Juan Adams -360. There's no chance I'm betting on someone making their UFC debut who's a low level heavyweight at -360. Chris De La Rocha, he's a tough guy. He's not particularly good, but I mean, who knows what will happen if he can eat Adams' shots in the first round and Adams ends up gassing out. It's just a complete swerve for me. I do not bet on low-level heavyweight fights. Maybe the very, very odd exception, but pretty much a betting commandment for me. Low-level heavyweight fights, I just swerve. So no action now. I'm not even going to make a prediction. As I said, I've done no tape. I have seen Adams' Dana White Contender Series fight. I don't remember it too well. We've all seen Chris De La Rocha. He's had a few fights in the UFC. Bit of a punching bag, but it's heavyweight. So I'm not going to make a prediction, and we're going to move on to Trevor Smith versus Zach Cummings. So Zach's moving up to middleweight here from the welterweight division. I'm hoping it's going to be the right decision for Zach. I always remember him having difficulty making weight. I think he's missed weight a couple of occasions. He had that incident as well where he was cutting weight and he slipped in the bath, so I'm assuming the slip was caused from him just being disorientated from the weight cut. He's always complained about the weight cut, so I'm hoping the weight cut was diminishing him to some extent, and we're going to see a fresher fighter at 185, much like his stablemate James Krause, who moved up to a welterweight last fight against Wally Alves and looked the best he ever has. So I'm hoping the same's going to happen for Zach here. I like Zach as a fighter. He's a solid fighter. He's got decent wrestling. He's got decent striking. He's got a good top game. He hits pretty hard, and he's got a granite chin. They've got the same reach. Trevor is 3 inches taller. He's pretty big middleweight, is Trevor Smith. Zach's been pretty successful in the UFC. He's only lost to Gunnar Nelson, Ponzinibbio and Prazeres, 3 fighters, all in the top higher echelon of their weight class. Only Gunnar's managed to finish him, sunk in a rear naked choke. He's got wins over likes of Dominic Steele, Nicholas Dalby, Yakovlev, Nathan Coy. I was going to critique Trevor Smith's record, but to be honest, if we look at it from a neutral standpoint, no one that Zach has beaten in the UFC is still in the UFC, so he doesn't really have a signature win. Neither does Trevor Smith. Trevor's got basically a real scrappy kind of style, very wrestling heavy orientated game plan. He's got a questionable chin. It's been a while since he was stopped. Not been stopped since he fought Magalhães back in November 2014, so it's been over 4 years since he was last stopped, but he hasn't really fought a puncher since then. Dan Miller, Joe Gigolotti, Andrew Sanchez actually can crack, and he survived for 3 rounds with Sanchez. Sanchez hurt him a couple of occasions, but Sanchez gassed, slowed down, and by the 3rd round kind of the power had gone out of his shots. Chris Camozzi's fought, and Elias, we know, is not a finisher, so he's got a losing record in the UFC. I think he's around 5-6. Again, the standard of opposition he's beaten, I mean, it's worse than who Zach's beaten in the UFC. Brian Houston, Tor Trong, Dan Miller, Joe Gigolotti, Chris Camozzi. None of them are with the UFC anymore. Lost to everyone else he's faced. He's had a couple of quick losses in round 1. Tauzlaitis and Magalhães stopped him really quick. He's been stopped previously in his career as well. Jan Valenti stopped him. Devin Cole stopped him back in the day, 2010. So there are question marks with regards to his chin. He's going to try and get the grind on here with Zach. Has to be very careful of Zach snatching his neck with a submission, but I can't see him wanting to stand with Zach. It's going to be interesting to see how Zach's power is up at middleweight. I'm hoping it's going to transfer well. The weight cut may have been training him. We may see he has tremendous power at middleweight, but Trevor, as I say, he's not been stopped for a while, but he's not really, besides Sanchez, who slows down, and he did get wobbled a couple of times in that fight. I wonder if Zach can put him away with being up at middleweight. It's going to be interesting to see how Zach copes with the wrestling approach of Trevor, especially with him moving up in weight. Is he going to be physical enough? Because Trevor is a physical guy. I think he will be. I think it was draining him significantly, that weight cut down to welterweight. So I do expect Zach to be able to keep this standing, and I think he can stop Trevor Smith. Trevor's getting up there in age now as well. He's 37, he's almost 38. His birthday's in January, so he's basically a 38-year-old. And I think Zach needs to make a bit of a statement here. Zach spends some of his time with Factory X. He's got his own gym, Glory MMA, but he does do time with Factory X. They're doing really well at the moment. So I'm expecting Zach to come out here and knock out Trevor Smith. As I said as well, Trevor needs to be careful when he shots. Could get a choke cinched up. We saw that happen against Nathan Coy, very good wrestler. Ended up getting his neck snatched from a fouled takedown. So I'm going to go with a knockout here for Zach Cummings. It is going to be interesting to see how he looks at middleweight, how he deals with the physicality that Trevor Smith brings to the table. But this would easily be the best win of Trevor's career in the UFC, his career as a whole in fact. And I don't think he's going to put it off. 38 years of age basically. He's pretty one-dimensional. His stand-up isn't great. He is hittable. I do see Zach piecing him up on the feet and putting him away at some point. Slight concern about how Zach deals with the clinching and so forth, but I think he's going to be okay. I think we will see the move to middleweight being a good thing for him, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he deals with Trevor. And I'm going to go with Zach inside the distance here. Wouldn't surprise me if he latches up a submission, but I'm going to go with a knockout win for Zach. Next up, Adam Milstead, Mike Rodriguez. This is another fight I've not really looked into. It's not a fight I'd consider betting on. It's at light heavyweight. The difference between light heavyweight and heavyweight for me in terms of how it can all change with one punch is pretty minimal, so it's again something I tend to avoid. I bet light heavyweight more than I do heavyweight, but low level is pretty much a complete pass for me. Adam Milstead, we've seen a few times in the UFC now, beat Chris De La Rocha, just dished out a hellacious beating for 2 rounds until I think the ref stepped in the end. It was just brutal. Got thrown all across the ring by Curtis Blades, ended up putting his knee out, and then he lost to Jordan Johnson in his return fight up from the knee injury. He was out for about a year. Jordan won a split decision. It was a close, boring fight. Jordan was trying to get his grind on. Adam done a pretty good job at stopping it. Decision probably, I haven't rewatched it, but from memory I think it could have gone either way. It was a really close fight. He's facing Mike Rodriguez here. I spoke about Mike a little bit last week, saying I'm looking forward to seeing him again. I didn't know he was on this card, and here he is. He looked pretty good against Devin Clark. He just couldn't deal with the wrestling. But on the feet, he had Devin Clark in trouble on a number of occasions. Looked good on the Dana White Contender Series against questionable opposition, I must admit. But I did like how he looked in the stand-up. So this is an interesting fight. I've seen people mention that Adam has a wrestling background, and I don't know if he's talked about leaning on it here or not, but I've seen people saying that he can utilise his wrestling here, and we have seen it is a weakness for Rodriguez because Devin Clark was taking him down pretty easy, but he did look dangerous on the feet. I did like his stand-up game. I'm not going to make a prediction. It's not a fight I'm going to bet on. Adam Milstead is he's come down a little bit since I last looked. He's -185. Rodriguez +160. There's no way I'm going to bet Adam Milstead, who's got a win over Chris De La Rocha, which he had a bit of trouble in. Absolutely obliterated by Curtis Blades, and then a loss to Jordan Johnson. There's no way I think he warrants that line. I think it should be a pick-em. I don't believe we've seen Adam's wrestling game. I could be wrong there. I've not watched the tape, but from what I've read and what I remember, I've seen him as a striker. Rodriguez looks good on the feet. Gun to my head, I'd bet Rodriguez purely based on the betting line. +160. For me, it should be a pick-em. But again, I'm not making a prediction. I haven't done the tape on this, and it's just not a fight that I would bet on. Low level light heavyweight is a pass for me, so good luck to anyone betting on it. I think the value's on Rodriguez going off memory and from what I've read, but pass fight for me. Next up is Dan Ig, however you say it, Jordan Griffin, and another one I've not had time to get taping on this one, guys. I've been a bit pushed for time this week. I don't want to provide a breakdown unless I've watched tape. I don't want to make mistakes with things I'm telling you. I like to be very informative with my breakdowns, hence why the podcasts are pretty long. I do like to go into detail, so I don't want to give you any false information here. I've not done a tape on it, I've just not had time. I'm really looking forward to this 2-week break because I'm going to aim to get an event ahead so I can get these pods out early. I'm hoping by Monday of fight week I can start dropping them, and it's really going to help me moving forward being a week ahead, because I'm a busy guy. It's difficult for me to tape all of these fights, so this is one that I pretty much knew I wasn't going to be betting on it. I don't like betting against guys that are debuting in the UFC. They normally up their game. It's hard to get a really good read on them. I do make some exceptions, but generally it's a pass for me. So this one just kind of screamed pass to me. I don't know how much tape there is on Griffin either. I think he's from... Is he from LFA? And LFA, historically, it's hard to find tape on those fights. So yeah, this one's going to be a pass for me. But I have taped the remainder of the fight, so I won't be skipping any more, guys. The rest of the fights I'm going to be giving you an informative breakdown. So we're going to start with the next fight, which is Gerald Meerschart versus Hermansson. Nice matchup, this one. I think it's good matchmaking. It's going to be a competitive fight. Hermansson's carved out quite a nice UFC career so far. He's been fairly fortunate in his matchmaking. When he has been given a step up, 2 times he has lost. Cesar Ferreira and the beast Thiago Santos both beat him, both stopped him inside the distance. He's got wins over Tauslatis, who is a bit shop worn there. I think he's retired. Bradley Scott, Alex Nicholson, Scott Askham, none of them with the UFC anymore, albeit Askham's doing fairly well outside the UFC at the moment. So he's beaten lesser competition, those that are kind of fringe UFC level. He's struggled when he's had a step up. He's matched up here against Gerald Meerschart. Meerschaert again, he's had a similar kind of run in the UFC. He's lost to Thiago Santos as well. But outside of that, he's had Joe Gigalotti, Ryan James, Eric Spicely, and he had Oscar Bachota last fight. Oscar had him in big trouble in the first round, but he gassed out, and Meerschaert took over in round 2 and finished Oscar. Showed great heart in that fight. Gerald is very tough. He's only been TKO'd once in his whole career. He's had nearly 40 fights. That was against Thiago Santos, and it took a bit of a beat down from Santos for the ref to actually stop the fight in the end. So he's a tough guy. He's crafty with his submissions. He's got a large number of submission losses on his record, but he's not actually been submitted for nearly 6 years now. So he really seems to have improved his ground game. Seems a lot more solid than it was. He's tough. His takedown defense does let him down. I think everyone that's tried to take him down in the UFC has, and Thiago Santos I don't think tried to take him down, but the other 4 opponents have. And besides Oscar, these aren't the best opponents, and to be getting taken down by them isn't great. And we know Hermansson is very dangerous from top position. He finished Alex Nicholson from top position. He finished Bradley Scott from top position, and Tauslatis as well. And he showed tremendous heart in the Tauslatis fight. Anyone that bet on Hermansson in that fight must have thought they'd lost their money, because I think it was a rib injury he suffered, and you could see him grimacing. He was in really bad pain, but he gutted through it and somehow won that fight. So both of these guys are really tough, really shown a lot of grit in the UFC. Hermansson's only been KO'd once in his career, but again by Thiago Santos, so they've both only been stopped by Thiago Santos. There's absolutely no shame in that. We saw him on Saturday. The guy is an absolute demon. So this is a really interesting fight. On the feet, I think Gerald is improving. He is a southpaw, so that could present some difficulties for Jack. I can see it maybe being fairly competitive on the feet. I think Jack's going to get takedowns and enough top control to take this decision. Hermansson's a -200 favourite. Not sure I'm really keen to jump at that. I maybe cap this a bit closer. So it's one that, yeah, I'm not in no rush to bet Jack here. I'll be interested to see what his decision line is, but I don't think we're going to get great plus odds on that. But it is good matchmaking. It's a competitive fight. They're both at a similar level. Their UFC careers have kind of mirrored each other in terms of the opposition and the losses. But I do think Jack's top control will be the difference here. I don't think he's going to force a stoppage. I think Gerald's too tough. I don't think Jack's powerful enough. He's not a Thiago Santos. But it is a competitive fight. It's in Milwaukee as well. Gerald does train at Rufus Sport, which is in Milwaukee, so he's going to have the home crowd on his side. Could that affect judging? Maybe, but I think this is going to be a mixture of on the feet and on the floor. I definitely think Hermansson can get Gerald down, and I think he can, as I said, do enough to grind out a decision here. So I like Hermansson to win a decision, but I think it will be a competitive fight. Next up we have Andrea Lee taking on Jessica Rose Clark in the women's flyweight division, £125. I was really intrigued to do tape on this because a couple of guys that I chat to who are big into the MMA betting and that I respect are really high on Andrea Lee here, and actually cap her really high. They was talking like -400, -450 favourite. Her odds currently are -250. She was around -275 when I started looking into this fight, so I was really intrigued because I thought she was going to be maybe a leg for me in a double, but I'm not seeing what they're seeing. Not saying they're wrong. Maybe my read is off and not as good as their read on this particular fight, but from the tape I've done, I'm definitely not loving them odds. I personally kept this closer to a pick'em. Like I said, I could be proven wrong. I was very unfamiliar with Andrea Lee going into my research for this fight. I went back quite far, watched a number of her fight. I started with the Rachel Ostovich fight. She absolutely savaged Rachel Ostovich. Now Ostovich isn't the best fighter. We're going back 3 years here as well, but yeah, just bludgeoned her pretty much for 3 rounds and got the armbar just before the end of the 3rd round. I watched her fight with Sarah D'Alio, who veteran in the sport, but she's not great. Her MMA record is 11-7. I mean, Andrea Lee had some success in that fight. It looked like she was gonna take over in parts, but she just never did, and she ended up getting submitted in the end by Sarah D'Alio. Now that fight is nearly 3 years ago, so I kind of gave her the benefit of the doubt there. She beat Jenny Liu. I couldn't find her LFA fight, so I watched the Jenny Liu fight, quick win over a not very good opponent. And then the one I was intrigued to watch was the fight with Liz Tracy in Invicta, which is from about 18 months ago. Liz, not the best fighter. She's got a 5-3 professional record, never beat anyone of note. I mean, she did take Ashley Yoder to a split decision a few years ago, and ultimately the Andrea Lee fight was a split decision. Now her style is very different to Jessica Rose Clark. Liz Tracy is more of a grinder, more of a wrestler, but it was a very competitive fight. Again, didn't leave me with a great feeling about Andrea Lee, but stylistically this is completely different to the fight she's going to get on Saturday, so you've got to be careful reading too much into it because she's not going to be facing a grinding wrestler in Andrea Lee. And then I went back and watched her UFC debut against Veronica Macedo. Pretty much dominated her, but how good is Veronica? She's not looked good in the UFC. I mean, before the UFC she had a draw with a terrible Hungarian women's fighter. I've not seen the fight. Maybe it shouldn't have been a draw, who knows. It probably happened over in Hungary. Let's have a look. It was Austria actually, so well, who knows. I've not watched the fight, but I mean, a draw with her isn't the best look. And then she was undersized against Ashley Evans-Smith, but she got wrecked in that fight. And she's had about 18 months off, came back and fought Andrea Lee, and just got dominated again. So Andrea Lee's game basically is she pushes forward a lot. Her stand up isn't great, but she's good in the tie clinch. She's got very good knees. She's got body lock takedowns, they're pretty good. She's very scrambly, she's tough. So I mean, she has got a lot of factors you look for when you're betting on someone, because she is tough, she is scrambly, she's going to fight for your money. But she's also got a lot of holes. Jessica Rose Clark isn't the best fighter out there, but for me it's definitely Andrea Lee's toughest opponent to date. Jessica Rose Clark has, I like her hands. Her hands are pretty good. I mean, she's not the most athletic girl, but she's definitely handy with her fists. She throws nice combinations. She's got good hands. She's got good kicks when she uses them, but she tends to use her hands more, so she doesn't mix it up so much. This will be her full fight in the UFC. She beat Beck Rawlins, she beat Paige Van Zandt, and then she lost to Jessica Rai in what was a pretty competitive fight with Jessica on the feet. Jessica managed to get her down in the third round to seal that round. It was probably 1-1 going into round 3. Paige Van Zandt, she used takedowns on Paige pretty much to win the first 2 rounds. A little bit worrying she lost round 3. Paige had a broken arm and basically Volume kicked her way to take the third round on the outside, and she beat Beck Rawlins. She has been taken down. Beck Rawlins managed to get her down twice. Once was off of a caught kick and once was a body lock takedown, and Jessica Rai hit a nice inside trip on her in round 3, so she can be taken down. So I can see why people like Andrea Lee here, because Andrea Lee can probably get that body lock and probably get takedowns, but on the feet I give the advantage to Jessica Rose Clark. I definitely think she's got the better stand up. She'll have to be careful in the tie clinch because Andrea Lee is good there. She's got very good knees, but at range I think Jessica lights her up with her hands. I didn't like though that I heard that Jessica Rose Clark has kind of organised their own camp for this one and left. I think she was at Extreme Couture previously. It seems like she's come away from there and kind of organised their own training. So I haven't looked into it too much. I'm not sure the reasoning, but not sure I'm particularly in love with her doing that. So for her to win this fight, she's probably going to be looking to keep it standing. She's going to try and keep the range, and she's going to try and at volume Andrea Lee, use her good boxing to win a decision. Andrea Lee's going to be pushing forward. She's going to try and grab hold of her. She'll take the tie plum if it's there. She's got good knees, and she's going to look for that body lock takedown and try and get top control. If she gets on top, she's probably going to be able to keep Jessica Rose Clark down. I don't see her offering much of a threat off of her back. But as I said, on the feet, I do like Jessica Rose Clark's hands. I do think she's definitely got the better hands and will win the stand-up. So it's just coming down to trusting Andrea Lee's fight IQ, and if she goes for the takedowns enough. I mean, going from her UFC debut, she ragdolled Machado and went for a lot of takedowns on her. So I'm assuming she's going to fight smart like that again. Maybe I'm reading too much into the fight before in Invicta where she fought the wrestler, because as I said, a completely different stylistic matchup. The girl was trying to wrestle with her, so it was a difficult one. She was getting taken down, but the girl's a wrestler. I don't really see Jessica Rose Clark presenting them problems. And if you go back, as I said before, the Liz Tracy fight, she did lose to Sarah D'Alio as well though, so it's still not someone I really trust, Andrea Lee. I can't get a solid read on how good she is due to the level of competition she's faced. This will be her best opponent today, as I've said. So yeah, I just can't really gauge how good she is or how good she isn't. It's a tough one for me. I'm going to pick her. I think she's going to be scrambly enough. She does have solid takedowns. She's decent on top. She will look for submissions. So I'm going to go with Andrea, but this will be the fight for me where I can kind of determine where she's at. I think what her ceiling is and how good or bad she actually is. I'm just finding it difficult from the level of competition she's faced to get a full read on here. So the guys, like I said, that are capping her as a bigger favourite than what the odds are, they might be right, and she might be a lot better than what I'm seeing from tape, and I've underestimated her. But just purely based on the level of competition she's faced, and she hasn't blown me away, so I'm finding it difficult to get a read on her. But Jessica Rose Clark isn't the best, but she does have, I do like her boxing. I think she's got tidy hands. So let's see how she deals with Jessica Rose Clark on the feet. Let's see if she's got smart fight IQ. She hits them body lock takedown. She uses her top control. She uses the knees in the tie plum, and I'm looking for her to crash the distance as much as possible, because she's going to get lit up otherwise. So looking for smart fight IQ, and then I can hopefully get a read on her. But odds for me seem a little bit wide, but I will go with Andrea Lee to probably win by decision. Next we have Joaquim Silva taking on Jared Gordon in the UFC's lightweight division, 155. Good fight here. Jared Gordon, well documented drugs battle in his past. He's had 3 fights in the UFC now. He beat Quinones on his debut, who isn't UFC caliber. He then decisioned a very faded Hakron Diaz in his next fight, and then he lost to the returning Diego Ferreira. He got dropped. Ferreira pinned his arm behind his back and just smashed his face where he couldn't protect it, where an arm was trapped, and until the ref stepped in. So had a rough fight there. Joaquim Silva's been in the UFC a while. He hasn't fought a great deal considering how long he's been in the UFC for. He was on the Ultimate Fighter, won a couple of fights, lost to Klose Franca, who was an absolute monster. If you guys remember him, he did fight in the UFC. He fought Gregor Gillespie, lost to Gillespie. I think he got cut after that, but he lost on the show to Franca, got submitted. Since then he's gone 3-1 in the UFC, but he's not faced the best competition. Nazareno Malgary, I don't even remember who he is. He won a split decision there. Beat Andrew Holbrook, who's just a chinless wonder. Beat Reza Medadi. I remember that being a pretty competitive fight. He was trying to keep it standing at strike Medadi, but Medadi was pretty relentless with the takedowns, but he did get a decision there. And his last fight he lost to Vince Pitchell in a striking affair pretty much. So this is going to be a battle again like the Medadi fight. Gordon's going to want this on the mat. Silva's going to try and keep it standing on the feet. Gordon pushes an absolutely torrid pace, real high paced fighter. I'm not as sold as some on his gas tank. I think he slowed down himself against Diaz. So it's going to be interesting to see what amendments he makes here. Does he still push the same pace? Has he tried to improve his cardio even further? Is he going to pace himself a little bit more? So going to be interesting to see how he approaches this, but I'm definitely expecting him to come out, try and get this to the mat and just push as high a pace as possible. Silva can be taken down, but he's quite difficult to keep down. He's got the advantage on the feet. Jared Gordon isn't overly skilled. It's just that high pace that he brings, that wrestling heavy approach, like real grindy fighter. That they're always tough to face because he's going to try and test your cardio. He's going to try and push you to the max. So this is a hard fight to call. Gordon, when the lines first opened, Gordon was a bigger favourite. Money has steadily been coming in on Silva. Gordon's now about he's minus 160. Silva plus 140. I've got it around a pick'em. So for me, if I was to bet on this fight, which I'm not because I don't have the strongest read. When I bet someone, I like to have a real strong read on how I think the fight's going to play out, what their strengths and weaknesses are. I think this should be closer to a pick'em. So I think if you're going to bet anyone, I think it should be Silva. I'm going to pick Silva as well. I'm not entirely sold on on how good Jared Gordon actually is. As I said, grindy, high pace. His wrestling isn't out of this world. Silva's tough to hold down. I think Silva could do enough damage on the feet. Jared is coming off a bit of a beatdown from Fahea, so it's going to be interesting to see how his chin holds up from Silva, who can bang. We've only seen him in the UFC knock out Holbrook, whose chin is non-existent. So I'm going to go with Silva here, but it's a hard fight to call. It's going to be a pretty competitive fight, I feel. I think it's going to be close. Jared Gordon's route is by outpacing Silva, getting the grind on, winning that route, but I think he's going to struggle to keep taking Silva down, and I think Silva's going to get enough done on the feet to take a close decision here back to Brazil. So Silva is the pick. Bobby Green, Drakkar Klose, the next fight. This is a very intriguing fight. Done a lot of tape on this, and it's a hard one to call. So Drakkar Klose has been in the UFC for some time now. He's had a few fights. Made his debut against Devin Powell, who was also making his debut. I remember betting Klose in that fight. I was really confident he was going to have too much for Devin Powell, and he did. Showed he was a level above him. Trains out of the MMA lab Klose. Since then, he's had a pretty good run. He beat Mark Diakese. He lost to David Taymor. Taymor managed to keep the fight at range, keep Klose away, just out kickboxed him to a pretty solid decision win. And then last fight, he beat Lando Venata. So he's had 3 pretty good strikers in a row, and he's got another striker here. So the UFC keep feeding him strikers. Klose doesn't excel anywhere. He's got a bit of a hard style to define, really. He's not got the best stand up. His hands aren't great. He does have very good calf kicks though. He hurt Mark Diakese with them. He hurt Lando Venata with them as well. So they're a big weapon in his arsenal. From watching Bobby Green fights, he switches stances a lot, so he can take away the effectiveness of that calf kick. But I did notice that in the first round he switched stance a lot, but that seems to drop once the fight wears on and we get to 2 and 3. He stays more orthodox, and he can be hit by calf kicks. I saw him eat quite a lot in his fight with, I think it was the draw with Lando Venata. Lando started landing them on him pretty much when he wanted. So there is that danger. But if Klose can't get them calf kicks going, his stand-up's pretty poor. He just doesn't really have great hands. So he is going to be looking for the calf kick, most definitely here. He will clinch up with you. He's got a decent wrestling. His takedowns are okay. His top control isn't particularly good. So I think he can get Green down. I can't imagine him being able to keep Green down though. Green's quite scrambly. So if you're close, you're going to want to land these calf kicks, try and slow Green's movement down, hurt that leg. I think whenever Green comes in and closes the gap, which he will constantly, Klose is going to clinch him, put him against the fence, try and work knees against the fence, and I think he's going to try and grind this fight out. Bobby Green is a good striker. He's got better hands than Klose. He has a very unusual MMA style. It's normally more suited to boxing, but he does a lot of shoulder rolling, which is a very hard style to pull off in MMA with the small gloves, and the difficulty it is to defend yourself from shots at close range. Robbie Lawler's the best shoulder roller I've seen in MMA. He was really good at it. Bobby Green's not bad at it, but he's not great. It does leave him hittable, and I think the kind of amount of punishment he's taken because of that style is starting to show now. Dustin Poirier, who we know how hard Dustin hits, so getting knocked out by him doesn't mean you've got a bad chin, but Lando had him hurt a couple of times as well. So
I think that style is catching up with him. Luckily for him, Klose doesn't have the best hands, and when he does land, he isn't a huge puncher, so his chin's probably going to hold up here, and he's probably not going to eat too many shots. But both these guys like the fight to be in close. Green likes it in close to use that shoulder rolling style to land his punches, and Klose likes to clinch up with you, grind you against the fence. At range he likes using them calf kicks, so it's a very interesting stylistic matchup here. Green's been he's had a lot of fights cancelled. I think he's had some injuries. I know he's got a lot of kids, and I think he's mentioned that as being a problem for him before. So I don't know where he's at mentally. He's coming off a win over Eric Koch. He had a tough first round, but then he came back and won round 2 and 3 to take a nice victory. Before that, he would have lost to Lando if it wasn't for the point deduction in the first round. He might even have got finished if it wasn't for that illegal knee and him then getting that time to recover. So he didn't look great in that fight with Lando, but then he did look better against Koch. But I don't really know where Koch's at because he's been injury plagued. But against Lando, I had Lando even winning round 3 until right at the end when Green put together that combination that seemed to stun Lando and probably stole him the round. So he was, if it wasn't for the point deduction, he definitely lost. Even with the point deduction, I think he was going to lose until the last 10 seconds of round 3. And as we know, Lando's not quite worked out like we thought he might after his UFC debut. So I think Klose is the fresher fighter. He's definitely got a lot less mileage on him. He just doesn't excel in any one particular area. It's just hard to get a lean on his style. Now the betting odds are definitely too wide in my opinion. I don't see why Klose can be a minus 300 almost favourite here. With his style, it's you're pretty much, he's not going to finish Green. It's very unlikely. He's got one path to victory, winning the decision, and he doesn't outclass Green enough in those areas for me to win that decision conclusively. So I don't really get the betting line at all. It's come down to minus 275 now. That's the lowest I've seen it actually. So I would not be surprised with some last week movement here where this line starts to tighten up and we maybe see Klose down at minus 200, maybe even a little bit lower possibly, because the line's definitely too wide. I do lean Klose and I am going to pick him, but that betting line, whoa, no way I could bet Klose down. I definitely don't blame people for stabbing at Bobby Green. I think the best line for this fight will probably be that it goes the distance. It's probably going to be lined fairly similar to where the Klose money line is currently. I'm not really a goes the distance better though. I find it a 15-minute horrible sweat where you flinch with every punch that lands and so forth. So it's not really my style. But if I was gonna bet Klose, I'd rather take goes the distance and bet Klose at his current line. Bobby Green, definitely worth a bet. Bobby Green decision, odds aren't out yet, but that would definitely be worth looking at. Green can win this fight. He's good in the clinch himself, where Klose is going to take the fight. He's got good elbows. His takedown defence isn't the best, but he's pretty good at getting up, scrambling back up. So I see this being a competitive fight. And if Klose can't get them calf kicks working and he can't start to jeopardise Green's movement, then it's going to be tough for him because he's just going to end up grinding him against the fence, I think. And judges don't really take that into account so much anymore, especially if Bobby's landing the better shots in space, which I think he will, because Klose hands just aren't great. Apparently these two know each other. I saw something where Bobby Green was surprised Klose took the fight because they've trained together in the past and so forth. Klose from MMA Lab, so they might have a good handle on Bobby Green and his style and come in with a good game plan. But I see it being fairly predictable in what he's going to want to do. He's going to want to land the calf kicks. He's going to want to clinch. He's going to want to put him against the fence. He's going to try for takedowns. He'd probably try for top control as well, but his top control isn't great. Green will want to close the gap, get his shoulder rolling going, start landing his punches. As I said, he's decent in the clinch himself. So it'll be an entertaining fight, I think. It'll be very competitive as well. I'm going to say close decision. but I can't bet him at that current price. I think that's too wide. I mean, I guess I can see where people were going betting Klose, because you look at his record, and since the Powell fight, he's beaten two very good strikers in Lando and Diakese. Lost to Timor, who kept him at range with kicks mainly, which isn't Green's style. Lando and Diakese are maybe, well, especially Lando here fighting range. Mark will try and use his kicks and so forth, but he's fairly hittable. He's not as good as Timor in terms of using his range and so forth. So I guess people are looking and seeing Green, another striker. He's already beaten two decent strikers. This Green isn't like Timor, but I mean, when you look at it closely, stylistically, it's a really close fight, difficult one to call. The line's definitely off, but I will pick Klose by decision. But it will be very interesting if he can't get them calf kicks going. I think he will, because looking at the Lando fight, Green just wasn't checking them at all. But if he can't, that leaves him very limited on the feet, and cage grinding, is that going to be enough to get a decision? So yeah, definitely a close fight, and I'm pretty intrigued to see how that goes. Ottow, Dwight Grant. When I first saw the line and saw Dwight Grant minus 300, I thought that is completely off. I actually completely forgot that Ottow lost to Sage Northcutt in his last fight. I did a little bit of tape on Dwight. I watched a couple of his fights. I mean, he doesn't impress me. He's from AKA, but I mean, I'm not high on the guy at all. He's got a great body frame for the welterweight division. He's tall, he's 6'1", but he's just not particularly good. I haven't seen his ground game. I've seen him defend a few takedowns. Seems like he's got a decent sprawl. Seems like an athletic guy, but he's very powerful. He hits hard, but he just wings shots, not really refined at all on the feet. I don't hold him in high regard really from the tape I've seen, and he's older than I thought as well. He's like 31 years of age. I think I even saw 33 somewhere. So how much better can he get at that age? It's unlikely he's going to improve a great deal. But he's facing Ottow, who just hasn't been overly impressive in his UFC run. He kind of wilted against Sage Northcutt, had a strong first round and then got dominated in the second round. He's beaten Mike Pyle, who was completely shot. He beat Kunimoto, who I actually bet on him against Kunimoto. Beat a Josh Berkman. Lost to everyone else. Sergio Moraes. I actually remember that fight. That was in Brazil, and I actually thought Zach could have got that decision. That was a decent performance there, but Jinglang Li put him away easily. Then Sage Northcutt put him away. Doesn't seem to have the best cardio. Doesn't seem to have the best chin. Dwight Grant's probably going to put him away here. I can't bet on Dwight Grant at a minus 300 price. I just don't think he looks nearly good enough. I don't know what his ground game's like either. Zach is a black belt in BJJ. I think he's a pretty competent grappler, so I don't really want to risk it. But I mean, I do see Dwight just knocking him out, but the price just puts me off. I can't bet someone who I've watched on tape and just am not impressed by at all. I just can't bet on someone based on their power, because if he doesn't put Zach away, who knows what's going to happen in this fight? Who knows what his gas tank is like? So it's not a fight I can touch. I'm going to pick Dwight Grant just because I think his power is going to be too much for Zach. I think he's going to put him away. But as I said, at that money line, I don't see how people are betting him at that price. It just doesn't appeal to me at all. He's got a 6-inch reach advantage. He's a few inches taller, couple of years younger, so he is 33 going off fight metric. So it's no, he's 34 in fact going off fight metric. He's same age as me. So wow, 34. So he is late to the game, Dwight. So I just can't see where improvement. I mean, I'm definitely looking to fade him. He's if he smashes Zach here, he's going to get more hype. It's definitely a fade job for me, but am I gonna pick, or should I pick Zach? This is a tough one for me because I just don't think Dwight's that great. I'm gonna pick Dwight. I think he's athletic enough to defend the takedowns. He's from a good camp, but I'm definitely putting him on my fade list because I don't think he looks very good at all. He's just powerful and relies on that basically. So I'm gonna go Dwight Grant by KO, but no way I'm touching him on a bet at that price, and not in a million years. On to the main card. It's only a 4-fight main card, so Charles Oliveira against Jim Miller. Charles Oliveira is one of my favourite fighters to watch in the whole of MMA, possibly even my favourite, because you just don't know what you're going to get with Charles. He's so inconsistent, so unpredictable. His submission game is among the best in MMA. He's so dangerous. If the fight hits the mat, you're in jeopardy. The guy is just shit hot on the mat. Great submission skills. He's got really good takedowns. They're really underrated. People must be starting to notice how good his takedown game is now. But this guy can take anyone down. His takedowns are so good. For when you look at his frame and his style, you just wouldn't think he has good takedowns, but takes everyone down. He took Will Brooks down. He was taking Gagos down in his last fight. He took Ricardo Lamos down, Anthony Pettis. He literally takes everyone down. But you just don't know if Charles is going to flake on you. It just makes him so difficult to bet. He's won 3 of his last 4. I bet him against Gagos because I just didn't see any way Gagos was going to pose problems for him. But as a big favourite, it's really dangerous betting on Charles, and he's a big favourite here. He's hovering around -300. Jim Miller is tough and gritty, and those types of fighters are dangerous to bet against when they're facing Charles, because if Charles doesn't put someone like that away in the first round, it starts to become a bit of a dogfight. You just don't know if Charles is going to quit. I mean, you look at 2 of his 2 most recent losses, or even 3 of his most recent losses against Felder, Lamas and Pettis. He had real good success in all 3 of them fights. Felder and Lamas, he had in big trouble in the first round, but then he just wilted. Anthony Pettis, he actually, see, this is why he's so unpredictable. At the first round against Pettis, he took a bit of a beating, but he took it. He came back, dominated the second round, and it looked like he was going to win it. I think he hit a takedown in round 3 on Pettis, but he got guillotined. But then you see there it lies in the flakiness. Got guillotined in round 3 by Anthony Pettis of a takedown. So it's just hard to bet him as a big favourite, but there's so many question marks with Jim Miller. And what I will say as well about Charles is his stand-up's pretty good as well. He's hittable because he's very upright, but he's got pretty good Thai boxing, so he is really well rounded. Jim Miller, he's had Lyme disease, which has caused him a lot of problems. He's on a shitload of medication for it, and he said after his win, his last fight against Alex White, he said it's the first time that he's kind of properly got on top of the Lyme disease. He's feeling great in the gym. I mean, you don't know how much of that to believe. He was coming off a win, so maybe it was just hot air. I always find it difficult to take what fighters say with regards to things like that too seriously. He had 4 losses in a row prior to that, but I mean, they're not bad losses. He lost to Dan Hooker, Trinaldo, Pettis and Poirier. I mean, they're all top fighters that he's lost to there. That's so, you know, was it just a case of the UFC were giving him too high a level, or is he on his way out? I mean, he took the first round off Trinaldo, but I think it was between round 2 and 3. He kind of said in his corner that he hasn't got it anymore. Then he comes back, Dan Hooker knocks him out quickly, but then he looks fantastic against Alex White. So Alex White was a step down in competition. You look prior to the Poirier fight, he beat Gomi, Lozon and Alves. You know, lower end of the lightweight division there. So maybe it's just a case with Jim that he's still got something left, but he's just not good enough to hang with the top level fighters. I think that might be the case with Miller. I think he can hang around the UFC a bit longer if he wants to, as long as he's fed the right type of opponents. Charles Oliveira, though, is another step up into the Hooker, Trinaldo, Pettis, Poirier kind of level of abilities. So I think it's going to be a tough fight for Jim. They did fight 8 years ago. I didn't go back and watch it, but I'm pretty sure I remember Jim hit a knee bar. He stood up from his guard and stepped across and nailed a knee bar on Oliveira. But it was so long ago. I'm not even. Charles has improved so much. I'm not even taking that fight into account here. I do think Oliveira's going to win this fight. I think he will snatch a submission. But if Jim can hang around into round 2 and make it a scrappy, tough fight, then he's got a chance, because you just never know when Charles is going to quit. You had the kind of phantom esophagus injury against Max Holloway. You had the fight with Cub Swanson where Cub hit him and he fell down like 5 seconds later. There's just been kind of so many incidences where he's wilted, so it's a hard fight. It's the price is hard for me to trust Charles at -300. He's not someone you can trust. I did trust him against Gagos. I think he was -350, but as I said, Gagos, he's borderline UFC level. Jim Miller's an established vet. He's savvy, he's tough, he's gritty. I don't think I can trust Olives in it at this price against Jim Miller, but I am picking him to win. I think he will win a submission, by submission, but I much prefer betting Oliveira as an underdog or closer to even money, just because then that's kind of factoring in the flakiness with the price. But at -300, you expect your man to win at that kind of price, and you just don't know with Olives. But another win for Olives here puts him on a bit of a roll. Would have won 4 of his last 5, especially if he gets a finish again. They're going to have to step him back up. So I think you'll find if he wins here, he'll get a step up next fight against someone higher in the division, and there will be a good price on Olives, where obviously depends on how the fight looks stylistically, where it's probably worth betting him because he is so dangerous. Or you'll start to get a good price on his submission line again. The lines aren't out here yet, but I imagine his submission props where he can pay around even money, which isn't great. We want to start picking them props back up when they're in the plus money, and we'll only get that when his money line's closer to even. So I'm going to go Olives submission, but the flakiness is real with Charles. So be careful, Oliveira betters. Next on the card we have Sergio Pettis, Milwaukee's own, facing Rob Font in the bantamweight division. So Sergio's actually moving up in weight for this fight. He fought in the UFC when he first joined at 135. Had a few fights in that weight class, but then moved down to 125, where I feel he is best suited when you look at his body frame. I'm surprised he's moving up. Not sure if 135 is the division for him. I mean, we've seen a lot of people move up in weight recently and do really well, but down at the lower weight class, I don't know if it works quite as well or in the same way. He's going to obviously be bringing speed with him, there's no doubt about that. Physicality wise, I'm not sure if he's going to be physical enough, especially once you get to the higher echelon of this division. I mean, prime example, his opponent Rob Font, all of his career was at 145 before he came to the UFC, and then he moved down to 135. So Rob's a big guy. So I mean, it's hard to believe Sergio's still only 25. Seems like he's been around forever now. But so he had his first stint at 135. Then he moved down to 125. Lost his first fight at 125 to Brian Benoit. It was a fight he was winning pretty comfortably, but then he got caught with, I think it was a big left hook, put him down. He also lost down at up at 135 to Alex Caceres. Again, it was a fight he was winning, but he got dropped. in the first round, and then in the third round Caceres took him down and managed to hit a choke. He was also dropped in another fight. I think it was Matt Hobart that dropped him. So interesting that he got dropped twice at 135. He wasn't overly hurt in either of the occurrences, and pretty sure they were both against southpaw fighters. So does he have a problem with southpaws? I don't know. Font isn't a southpaw and he's not a switch hitter, so if he has got a southpaw weakness, it's not going to rear its head here. But I do think it's interesting he did get dropped twice, did get knocked out by Ryan Benoit. Now I know Benoit he does hit hard, he kind of swings for the fences. He's not got many UFC wins besides, I think he's got a head kick KO win, maybe a couple actually. I don't know if he's knocked many people out in the UFC with his hands, but he does hit hard because he swings everything into it. So I mean, I'm not saying he's got a suspect chin, but there is a question mark there for me. He was knocked out by a 125er, he was dropped by two 135ers. Has he got a granite chin? Possibly not. I mean, Rob Font hits harder than anyone he has faced in his career, that's a fact. So if there is any issue whatsoever with his chin, it's highly likely that it's going to rear his head here. Basically with Sergio, you've got a very technical stand-up fighter. He doesn't tend to go for takedowns. Takedown defense has been a bit of a weakness for him in the past. It's definitely improved, especially his get-ups. Henry Cejudo, I think he got up every time Cejudo took him down. He was held down in long stretches over. He did eventually work his way back to his feet. Benavidez struggled to get him down, and then Formiga did get takedowns on him, but I remember the first takedown Formiga hit, he took him down, but Sergio managed to get straight back to his feet. I think there was another occasion when he got taken down and he managed to get back up. He defended another takedown in the third round, but as he was prying his leg away, he gave his back to try and run away, and you can't do that against Formiga. He just backpacks you. So, but Sergio's got really good stand-up, as you expect from a Rufus Sport fighter and the brother of Anthony Pettis. Very technical. He likes to stand at range, work from there. He will switch stances. He switched between orthodox and southpaw, so that can be confusing for opponents. Doesn't really have any power. See, this is the other thing. So he's moving up to 135. There's a question mark over physicality, and then power. He lacks power at 125. So I just can't see him coming up to 135 and troubling, especially the better fighters up at 135. I just can't see it. I can't see his power having any problems for Rob Font, who in his career has been stopped by strikes. Let's have a quick look at his record. He's never been stopped by strikes. He's faced John Lineker as well. I kind of like what he done in that fight with Lineker in a way. I mean, I didn't like how he fought exactly, but when he was getting bombarded, he'd kind of drop down against the fence to his back, which, I mean, it's clever in a way because it gets you out of that line of fire, but putting yourself on your back, well, that's a different story. But yeah, he is durable. Essen kind of dropped him, didn't really hurt him, just put him down on one knee. So I can't see Pettis having any luck with his power against Rob Font. How he's going to win this fight is by working from the outside and doing enough to take a decision. It's the only path to victory I can see for him here. He doesn't really work for takedowns and top control. His fight IQ has been questionable in the past, seems to have improved most recently. So he's still only young, still only 25. He's had a lot of experience in the UFC now, so he should be really comfortable in there. But I'm just not fully sold on why he's moving up a division here. I've not heard any interviews. I'm assuming 125 is a tough cut for him, but I don't think it really should be. It's not like he's got a massive frame in now. I mean, he is pretty ripped, but I don't know. Maybe he is getting older now. He made his debut in the UFC in 2013, so he was probably about 20. Maybe his frame's filling out and it's getting more difficult for him. But I just don't know how much success he's going to have against the upper echelon at 135. I just don't think he's got the style to really succeed. When you look at his weaknesses as a whole, which even though he is working on it, takedown defence, there is a question mark there with me for his chin. How durable is he? He did eat some big shots from John Moraga in their fight, but Moraga's orthodox. It made me think if Moraga's landing, Rob Font's going to land that right hand. So this fight for me is Sergio needs to prove himself to me at 135, but he does have really good technical stand up, very proficient with his stand up. If you take away the Formiga and Cejudo fights, he was beating Benoit and Caceres. He just kind of brain farted, which is something I think he has worked on. He was winning them fights pretty handily. So, but then he had a pretty competitive fight with Meza that was up at 135 as well. So for me, when I look, it is a long time ago. It's 4 years ago. He's like 21, so maybe I'm being too harsh. Maybe you've got to give the kid a break. But when he was at 135, he had a fairly competitive fight with Meza. He got dropped by Hobart and Caceres. He lost to Caceres as well. But as I say, he's older now, his frame's filled out. Maybe he's going to look improved at 135, but I need to see it with my own eyes before I trust the reason for him moving up. And I just don't think he's got the intangibles to have long-term success there as he climbs up the division. Rob Font is a tremendous boxer. He's got excellent power in his hands. He does use some head kicks as well. The second time he hurt Almeida was with a head kick, so he can throw head kicks. He will put them out there. His UFC run, basically he's lost to John Lineker, Pedro Munoz, two tremendous pressure fighters he struggled with. Rafael Assunção isn't a pressure fighter, he is a counter striker, but he's possibly top 3 in the division. He's so underrated, Assunção, and Assunção did mix in grappling in that fight as well. Rob's takedown defence isn't the best, but I really see it being something Sergio is going to or can exploit here. Rob's got decent jiu-jitsu, so he's beaten Joey Gomez, he destroyed on the feet. George Roop, he destroyed on the feet. Matt Schnell, he destroyed. Not the best names, but he done what he was supposed to do. Round 1, well, Gomez was round 2. Destructions. Douglas Andrade, he absolutely destroyed. Looked fantastic in that fight. Really, really good performance. I think he was a big underdog in that fight as well. He came in. Oh no, he was the favourite. No, he was a big favourite because I remember I couldn't bet Rob. I thought the line was unjustified. But he came out and looked about minus 1,000. It was a fantastic performance. Pedro Munoz, he was looking good, but he kind of got rocked, and then he showed kind of what Sergio's shown in the past, just poor fight IQ. But I'd say this is more poor composure. He got hurt. I don't think Rob's used to getting hurt in fights. He's got a pretty flawless record prior to coming into the UFC. He had the one loss to Lineker in his third fight, and one loss right at the start of his career to Desmond Green. So I think he showed a lack of composure there, shooting on Pedro, because that's the one thing you don't do under any circumstances, especially if you're not a really good wrestler stroke grappler, and Rob isn't. So yeah, lack composure there. Thomas Almeida, he looked really good against. Hurt Almeida with a right hand. Showed good patience, didn't rush him for the kill, didn't get careless. Hurt him again, landed a head kick, put him away. And then he's coming off the loss to Assunção, where, it's Assunção, he's a great fighter. No shame in losing the decision there, and Assunção grappled a lot in that fight. So if Rob's going to come in here, I don't think he's going to be afraid to walk Sergio down. I think his power is going to cause Sergio problems if he lands that right hand. He's got a lovely jab, Rob, which he will use to set up the right hand. And I think once he starts landing that right hand, I don't see Sergio taking that power. I really don't. Rob's power is, for a bantamweight, he hits really hard. The one interesting thing with Rob for me is he used to be with Mark Delagrotti, who I really like him as a trainer, and I think he's really good in the corner. I don't think he's been in his corner since the Andrade or Munoz fight. He seems to have gone more with Joe Lozon's team now, and I think it's Joe Lozon's boxing trainer that tends to be in his corner now, along with a couple of others. I'm not sure who they are. He's done some work at the UFC PI as well. He does train with Calvin Kattar, so he's going to be getting excellent boxing sparring. But I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I do like Delagrotti, so I'm not sure why that relationship ended. But I do like him here against Sergio. I think the line is, let's have a look where we are now, -165 Rob. I don't think that's a bad price for Rob Font here. The question mark is, Sergio is going to try and stay on the outside. He's going to try and kickbox him. Will Sergio's speed coming up from 125 be too much? Can he avoid the power of Rob? Stand on the outside. Rob's got to fight intelligently. He's got to cut the cage off, not chase, not get impatient. Just stick to what he does. Just get that jab working. So there is a question mark here with the speed of Sergio possibly causing problems, but I don't think Sergio's like amazingly fast. He is quick, but I don't think he's got kind of real quick hands. He is going to be a bit quicker than Rob, so that is the one question mark going into this for me. But I do see Rob's power getting to Sergio and putting him away, especially with all the pressure that I'm sure he's going to bring, because I can't see Sergio being able to hurt Rob. I think Rob's pretty durable, so I'm going to go with a Rob Font knockout victory here in Sergio's hometown of Milwaukee. Co-main event, Dan the Hangman Hooker against Edson Barboza. This is great matchmaking, really good fight. We get to see where Dan Hooker really is at in the lightweight division. I think that was the best decision he's made, is moving up to the lightweight division from featherweight. I think the cut was obviously taking far too much out of him. Since he's moved up to the featherweight division, to the lightweight division rather, he's looked fantastic. He's an excellent kicker. He trains at the same gym as Adesanya, Shane Young, Kai Kara France. So he's got they're really building a great team at that gym. So his kicking's really good. We've seen him kind of steadily improve. Before I watched tape on this, I definitely thought I was going to be betting Barboza, especially when I saw Barboza was the underdog. But my recollection of Hooker was kind of still the Jason Knight fight for whatever reason. But I went back and watched all these fights at 155 since he fought Ross Pearson. He's had 4 fights at 155, and he's just looking better and better in each one. Against Pearson and Diakese, he was mainly using kicks, so I kind of had a bit of a, in my head I was like, is he really going to be able to out kickbox Edson Barboza? But then his hands started coming more into his fights against Miller and Burns, where he looked fantastic. The guy's got dangerous knees, he's got power in his hands, he seems really durable. It's really weird. He looks even bigger at lightweight than he did at featherweight. He's a massive lightweight. And yeah, the improvement's been pretty staggering. He's just improved so much since you go back to that Jason Knight fight just a few years ago. He needs to pressure here though against Barboza, which isn't Hooker's natural game. So asking someone to do something that doesn't come natural to them, it is a tall task. We all know how dangerous Edson Barboza is at kicking range. That's what his game relies on. His kicks are just lightning quick, very powerful. This is his first camp at ATT, so it's going to be very interesting to see how he looks after being at ATT. Why has he changed camp? You know, he's getting on now. Are they going to make a big difference to his game? What is it about his previous camp that with Mark Henry that he's doubting? Why has he moved? What I am really interested to see here is if Edson implements calf kicks. We know that at ATT they all come out with calf kicks. Edson's a big leg kicker, but he's always kicked the thigh. Him implementing calf kicks I think would be massive, because he's got so much power in his kicks. A few kicks to the calf and that could seriously jeopardise someone's calf. So I'm really interested to see if he implements that. He does struggle with pressure. That is the weakness for Barboza. We've seen him struggle against pressure fighters in the past. Tony Ferguson, I mean, that was just crazy pressure. He actually done alright in the first round, but eventually started to wilt. He struggled with Michael Johnson pressuring him, and he also struggled with the pressure of Dariush. He ultimately won that fight, but I bet Barboza in that fight, and I thought my money was gone until he pulled that flying knee out of the bag. So Dan Hooker does need to pressure here, but he's not a pressure fighter. So can Dan Hooker close that gap to stop them kicks coming? The big thing for me here is Barboza's coming off 2 massive beatdowns. Took a tremendous amount of punishment against Khabib and Kevin Lee. The kind of punishment that's career changing. Especially, you know, he's about 32 now, Barboza. He's been around a while. They must have taken something out of him. Surely there's no way they haven't. And I've always had a question mark with regards to Barboza's chin as well. It's always made me nervous betting him, rightly or wrongly. Some people will argue that his chin's fine, and I mean, I know he took those beatings from Khabib and Kevin Lee, but ground and pound's is a bit different. It's not as powerful. Obviously the number of strikes add up, but you can't get as much power into a strike when you're grounding and pounding as you can when you're striking with someone on their feet. But we saw him get dropped pretty heavily by a Cerrone jab. Danny Castillo dropped him with an overhand. Jamie Varner put him down. But then we went through a spell where we didn't really see him get hurt, so it was like, well, did we, you know, maybe his chin was alright all along and he just got caught by a few haymakers. But them 2 beatdowns he's had, I think, are just going to have taken something out of him, so I'm just not sold on how durable he's going to be now. And Dan Hooker, although it's a difficult fight for him stylistically in the sense that he needs to pressure because he stays at range, it's a dangerous game he's playing. I don't see Edson stopping Dan Hooker. I really don't. Dan's never been KO'd. I mean, not to say Edson can't, because we've seen him pull off some crazy KOs. Terry Etim spinning wheel kick, the Dariush flying knee. But Hooker's definitely the fresher man here. He's got some real hype behind him, momentum. Four great wins in a row at lightweight, all by stoppage. I think Dan Hooker's I think he could stop Barboza. I would not be surprised if Edson wins this on a decision by kickboxing and Hooker just being unable to create the pressure he needs, because it's all well and good trying to be a pressure fighter, but then you need to know how to cut the ring off correctly, not chase. I mean, Barboza has got good footwork, and it's like I said, it's going to be interesting to see him at ATT with the, you know, I'm expecting half kicks from him as well, so Hooker could be in jeopardy if they start landing. But I'm just going to go with the younger, fresher guy here. I've got a question. If Barboza wasn't coming off them 2 horrific beatdowns, I may side with him, but I just think if Hooker catches up with him and lands something, I don't know if Edson's going to survive. I mean, who knows? He could end up looking fine and no durability issues, but he effectively got beaten down for 8 rounds pretty much. I mean, I guess he didn't take too much damage in round 3, I don't think, against Khabib, but that's a lot of damage. That's like 35-40 minutes of kind of constant beatdown he was taking. But we know how dangerous he is. He nearly knocked out Kevin Lee, caught him, so you can't write Barboza off. Dan Hooker's a slight favourite. I think the money line's about right. I'm going to pick a Hooker KO. But I can see a path for Edson, so I totally get why people are betting him. But I've got to go with a fresher fighter, the one that I think is more durable, the one that's got the momentum. And I know Edson's lost to 2 grapplers and not strikers, completely different stylistic matchups. But the change of camp as well makes me think, why has he done that at this late stage of his career? But it's going to be interesting to see how Hooker comes out. He needs to pressure. If he's standing at range, it could be a long night for him, but he's an intelligent guy. He's going to know what he needs to do. He's got a great camp over there in New Zealand, so I'm going to go with Hooker to keep the momentum going. The guy's on a roll, looking really, really dangerous. So Hooker KO I'm going to go for, but I'm not overly confident. And then main event of the night, we've got Kevin Lee taking on Iaquinta, rematch from Kevin Lee's debut in the UFC 5 years ago now, when he was 21 years of age. I think he took that fight on short notice against Al. It was a pretty competitive fight. Al dropped him with a jab. I think that was in round 1. Al won round 1. Round 2, Kevin Lee won. Went for a takedown. Al gave his back trying to get up. Kevin jumped up, put the hooks in, took his back, had his back for the rest of the round. Round 3, Kevin, he couldn't get Al down and got outstruck. It was pretty competitive on the feet. It wasn't like Lee was killed, and this is a really, really green Lee back in his UFC debut. What I did notice is how much more mass Lee seems to have put on. I've got no idea how he makes 155 compared to this fight kind of 5 years ago. It's really, really filled out. Guy's huge for 155. He needs that 165 division. So it'd be interesting to see if he makes weight. He's fought a lot in the UFC, Kevin Lee. He's steadily improved. I was a bit of a Kevin Lee doubter, to be honest with you, at first. But you look back now, and he's got a win over Prazeres, which is a fantastic win. Especially it was only his 4th UFC fight. He's got great wrestling. He's physically very strong. His stand-up's improved a lot. The one question mark for me with Kevin is his chin. We have seen him. Iaquinta dropped him with a jab. I mean, he recovered well. Just looking over his record, who else hurt him? Leonardo Santos. I bet Kevin Lee in that fight. And I still think it was an early stoppage. Lee wasn't out. I still think the ref could have let that go. So he did get hurt, but he did recover. I'm pretty sure Efrain Escudero hurt him as well at some point in that fight. And Trinaldo hurt him, but I think that was to the body, so that wasn't a chin issue. Tony Ferguson dropped him, but he recovered well. And then Edson Barboza hurt him as well. But I mean, that spinning wheel kick or whatever it was he landed, it's spinning heel kick, is gonna probably put anyone in jeopardy. And man, he done the chicken dance there. He done so well to recover. So he has been hurt a few times, but he does recover. So I mean, that just shows testament to his recoverability and how fit he is. So, you know, is his chin an issue or not? Maybe it's not. It still lingers there in my mind that he's been hurt a few times, but he has recovered really well. So I'm not going to look too big into his chin. He's got one KO loss, well, TKO loss, and I think that was a premature stoppage. So yeah, so I'm not going to read too much into it. Here he's going to look to wrestle out. I think he will be content to stand for some periods. I don't think he's going to chase the takedown if it's not there. It's a 5-round fight, so he doesn't want to gas himself out, Kevin Lee. He is an absolute beast on top. I think he's more dangerous on top than Khabib is. This guy will smash you from top position. Really, really dangerous. We saw how good Al is defensively against Khabib. Managed to survive 2 rounds under him. Khabib slowed down, only got 1 takedown the rest of the fight. Actually ended up getting outstruck by Khabib. I don't know if Al was a bit gassed, a bit hesitant because of the takedown, maybe a combination of the two. But Kevin Lee's going to want to come out here and make a statement. He's going to want to finish Al. He's going to want to say, look, I finished Al. Khabib couldn't do that. And he's definitely going to want that W back from when he lost to Al on his UFC debut. So I think, even though it's a weird fight for Kevin Lee to take, I do understand why he's taking it, because he's going to want the finish and he gets that W back as well. So yeah, Kevin's going to come out, he's going to look for the takedown, he's going to look for the finish from top, but he needs to make sure he doesn't get overzealous, because he doesn't want to gas himself out, because he does cut a lot of weight, but his gas tank looked fine against Barboza. Al's been really inactive over the last few years. He was looking like a contender at one point. He had a couple of, going back to kind of what we said about Sergio, he had a couple of brain fart losses, lost to Chiesa and Mitch Clark in fights he was absolutely dominating and ended up getting submitted. Then he beat Rodrigo Dam, Ross Pearson, Joe Lozon, stopped them all. He had a controversial win over Jorge Masvidal. That's nearly, wow, that fight in April was 4 years ago. So in almost 4 years, he's only fought Diego Sanchez and Khabib. Came back after a 2-year layoff against Diego, put him down in a minute and a half. Another year layoff, took the Khabib fight on really short notice and lost a 5-round decision, but done himself very proud in that fight. Survived the first 2 rounds. Khabib slowed down, couldn't get Al down again. So Al has got good takedown defense, and he showed good takedown defense against Kevin Lee in their first fight. Kevin struggled for takedowns, but Kevin Lee is a different beast these days. He has improved a hell of a lot. Al, since that first fight, has had a lot of injuries. He's not nearly been as active as Kevin Lee. So Kevin has to be careful of Al's power, because Al can hit hard. He has got decent takedown defense, but I think this is Kevin Lee's fight for the taking. He's on the upswing. He's still a young man, still only 26. He's looking better and better every fight. His top control is frightening, very powerful. His stand-up's improving. He's got a 7-inch reach advantage here as well. So Al's going to have to come inside. It's going to leave him open for the takedown. I think Kevin will get Al down more than he did in their first fight. I think he will have more success with the takedowns. And on top, he's frightening on top. He really is. And he's going to want the stoppage here. So I'm going to go with Kevin Lee here, and I think Lee will get the stoppage as well. I think he can get a submission on Al. He defended well against Khabib, but we've seen him submitted in the past. I think Kevin Lee can soften him up with some nasty ground and pound. I think eventually Al gives his back, and I think Kevin Lee will get under that neck and force a submission. Kevin Lee is a sizable favourite. He's -310. I've seen people questioning the price. I personally think it's probably about right, to be honest. Al's been so inactive. He had a good showing against Khabib, don't get me wrong, but first 2 rounds he was pretty much manhandled, and Khabib slowed down. I don't think Kevin will. I think Kevin can get the takedowns. He's so physical, and as I said, I think he's more dangerous on top than Khabib. So I'm going to go for Kevin Lee to make a more impressive showing here than Khabib did, and then he's going to use that angle to try and set himself for the Khabib fight. But it's going to be a tough fight to get, because there's a bit of a queue forming at the top of this lightweight division at the moment. But Lee, he need an impressive performance here to keep himself in contention, and I think he will deliver. So I'm going to go with Kevin Lee submission. If you want to check out the picks for this week and sign up, guys, the website is www.prommmabetting.com. You can follow me on Twitter at prommmabetting. I wish you all the best of luck for this week. There is a 2-week break after this card. We get one card before Christmas, then we get another 2-week break. So after this card, we've only got one UFC in a month, which I'm actually quite happy about, 'cause we get a little bit of a break. And as I said at the start of the show, it allows me to get on top of these cards, because I'm going to have a couple of weeks either side of the next card to try and get ahead of myself and start dropping these breakdowns sooner and trying to break down every fight. But it can be difficult when you've got 13, 14 fights on a card. As I said, I don't want to be going off memory with my picks. I do want to look at tapes. I don't want to be giving out wrong information, basically. So best of luck, guys. As I said, follow me on Twitter, check out the website for the betting packages, and let's have a strong end to the year. See you later.